Okay, so welcome back. We're going to finish off the questions about innovation and entrepreneurship now. We're going to look at some of the dilemmas that businesses face with respect to innovation. And we'll also look at some of the questions about first mover advantage. I mean, does it pay to innovate before somebody else? And under what circumstances does it really pay to be a first mover? So let's get started on some of these traditional innovation dilemmas. So the first thing we want to underscore is, well, what is innovation? We've talked about entrepreneurship, but what's innovation? Innovation is basically the conversion of new knowledge into a new product, process, or service, and this is extremely important, putting of this new product, process, or service into actual commercial use. Meaning it goes beyond, this is a typical innovation funnel you've got over here, okay? You go from, I've got an idea, I'm going to identify an opportunity, I'm going to select and evaluate my opportunity, I'm going to test my new product, and I'm going to launch the new product. And at the end of this innovation process, well, I've actually created a new product, process, or service that is in commercial use. I'm not just building a prototype. So innovation is not the same as invention. And this is really important, is that you can invent something great, but until you've gone to testing it and launching it, you've not innovated. Innovating requires the end game. You've got to go all the way through. Can you innovate without inventing? Sure. Yeah, you can innovate all the time without inventing. You can get innovation. You can get inventions from somebody else. Can you innovate without inventing? Yeah, it's pretty simple. Are all innovations inventions? Not at all. Not at all. You can make improvements to existing products. It's not a major invention. It's just a modification. So innovation and invention are not the same at all. And we have to keep that in mind. Now there's three big dilemmas, and I've got here a pile of cars here, and I've got a nice 4x4 on top, and I'll tell you why in a second. There's three challenges or dilemmas that businesses face with respect to innovation. The first dilemma is, do we follow technological opportunities or do we follow the market? And this is often seen when we look at radical versus incremental innovation. And typical example here is over here, is that recently what we've seen is that the major American car manufacturers have given up producing sedans and are just producing, SUVs. The technology in cars today may suggest that we do something else, but they're primarily following the market demand. So innovation, can be what we'll call market pulled, or it can be technology pushed. We've got a new technology, do we get it out, even if the market may not be ready? These are tough questions sometimes. The second dilemma that we faced is, do we invest in product or process innovation? Do we make a new way to build what we've got? Or do we make something new? And the last dilemma that we face, or question with respect to innovation, is, should we have an open or closed process? And I'll explain that in a second. So the first innovation dilemma we've got is, do we go with tech push or market pull? Well, tech push innovation basically is saying we've got an R&D unit out there, we've developed some really cool innovation. Should we follow this innovation and fire off some really crazy new thing that we've developed in the labs that may be very disruptive? This is tech push innovation. We've designed a new technology. Do we go for it? Or do we listen to the market? Do we go to our customers? Do we assess the pain points that they've got? Do we talk to our lead users? Lego does this with user groups. Volvo Trucks sets up tents along freeways and has truck drivers test new ideas. Playmobil develops games with children and develops toys with children. Do we go to the lead users and say, hey, what's not working? How can we improve our product? Do we undertake frugal innovation? We know our customers maybe don't have a lot of money, a lot of resources, so we try to adapt to our customer base. All of these are examples of market pull. We're looking at use by customers, and that's driving what we innovate. So do we listen to the customers, or do we listen to technology? And Tata, for example, did this. They listened to their market, and they said, yeah, our market wants super low-cost car that they can afford, no frills, etc. And the Tata was born, the Tata Nano was born in this way. It's not an easy question. It's not easy to resolve. There's no right answer here. Technology push or market pull, if you listen to your audience and you listen to your customers all the time, yeah, you'll be satisfying your customers of today. But if you don't use technology push, sometimes your current market will pull you away from the future market. And markets can switch really quick. And I'll give you a simple example. In the United States, we saw the price of gasoline go up really fast and really high. And it was kind of unexpected. And suddenly, consumers of automobiles wanted, cars that didn't consume a lot of gas. But the suppliers weren't there. They hadn't developed the technology. They weren't ready with the technologies because they were trying to satisfy current customer needs and not future customer needs. So companies that solve this problem try to do both. They try to do both. They have two innovation systems that are in parallel. One called, go-to-market type of innovation policies that they can, they're solving the market problem. And other ones that are kind of, in the back, black ops, as they call them, and they're trying to develop the technologies of tomorrow. But it's hard in an organization to have these two approaches simultaneously coexist. And this is why sometimes the tech push type of innovations or options that we'll invest in sometimes are actually physically separated in the organization. Second innovation dilemma is product or process. Do we innovate in the product, or do we innovate in the process? Now, product innovation basically is looking at the features of the product. So what features do we have in the product that we're selling? Apple's pretty good here. This is typically happening in the first stages of an industry. There's no standardized definition of what the product should or could be. And so people are jockeying for position to define what the standard is. And so we're doing a lot of product innovation pretty early on in industries, when industries are born or sectors are born. This happened in video cassettes, video discs, and it's happening right now with e-vehicle recharging methods. There's a lot of technologies out there to recharge your car, but not one has found the standard, if you can call it that. And so we're still moving around. And over time, a dominant design will emerge. But until that time, we're investing a lot in product or feature innovation. Process innovation is about how the product is produced and distributed. Dell computers is a pretty good example of that. Dell computers basically optimized differentiation of computers, so people could design their own computers, but they didn't innovate at all in the components of the computer. They basically assembled simple components in a modular format, but they created direct sales, they differentiated, people could design their computer online, you could build it to order, and that was their innovation. Now, process innovation usually occurs in industries when the dominant design exists or after it's emerged. So we create, for example, a dominant design. Here's the standard in the market. And now we start innovating on, okay, how can we make that design cheaper in a less expensive fashion than our competitors? How can we be better at creating that standard? And process innovation occurs. So what we'll see is over the life cycle is we'll see product innovation coming out, the dominant design will come in, so we start seeing less product innovation going on here. Dominant design emerges, and so we stop innovating in the product features, but then suddenly process innovation takes over, because now that this dominant design exists, the big question is, well, who can build this at the cheapest price? Who can decrease the cost, and who can be most efficient? And so we start innovating in processes once this design is established. Third dilemma in innovation is about open or closed innovation. A lot of people think that innovation happens like in a lab, in a company, it's closed process. A big company like Procter & Gamble has its own R&D labs, and they develop their own ideas, and they make their patents, and they do all of it in-house, and they create their innovations. And this would be what would be called closed innovation. Everything's in-house. Well, a few years back, some people started to think about the idea of, well, what if we open it up? What if we had the opportunity here, and I'll take my my trusty pen. What if we have ideas out here, that actually, don't come in the funnel this way, but they come outside. Somebody else has thought of an idea, they come to the company, they provide them with a potential business creation, and it comes in later on in the funnel. Hey, I've already tested this. Do you guys want to take it? For example, the company has a great idea, and instead of following it all the way through the market, they spin it out. And the company that created the idea doesn't follow it all the way through. They spin it out and say, well, it's not really our core offering, so we're going to let somebody else manage this. We'll spin out part of our employees will create their own company, for example. So the funnel, this innovation funnel, is not as closed as we think. And the idea that we can use the marketplace to help us find ideas and find solutions that we can't do internally helps us create potentially more innovation. Really good example of that, Procter & Gamble. Another good example, Volvo. Volvo works a lot with local universities. Instead of trying to do things in-house, they basically will go to the university and say, hey, what's the new technology you got going? Can you help us develop some new trucks, for example, using such and such technology? So I said, Pringles is a good example with P&G. Procter & Gamble makes these crazy potato chips, I'm sure you're all aware of. And a while back, they had this idea, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could print on a potato chip? And I think this was done for Halloween or something like that originally. And they couldn't figure it out. They couldn't figure out how to print food coloring on a potato chip. And so what they did is they challenged the market. They asked outwards in the marketplace, hey, does anybody out there know how to do this? And they found, I think it was in Italy, some person who had developed a way to print on a potato chip. And so they pulled that idea, that technology, into the company from the outside. And that's a really good example of open innovation. NG practices open innovation. You can visit their website where they're actually, creating challenges and focusing and trying to find steps to help them solve problems and whatnot. So this idea that innovation has to be closed is not always the case. I mean, open innovation can make a big difference. So do we open it up or do we close it? If there's a lot of competition, if it's really intense, we may want to favor closed innovation processes. If it's too open, our competitors can probably use the openness to their advantage. They're going to get an eye on what we're doing. If we send out a call to the marketplace and say, hey, we're looking to find a way to print on a potato chip, maybe if we've got intense rivalry, our rivals are going to say, ooh, they want to print on a potato chip, so maybe we have to go in that market. Secondly, if we're looking at one-shot innovations, here there's going to be a clear winner or loser in this innovation process, and we probably want to keep it closed with respect to the process. If we're continuously innovating, however, if it's not just a one-shot, we can open it up more. We're constantly looking for improvements. We're constantly modifying our products. Here we can look at more open innovation processes, and it helps us to get more inventions, more ideas in the process. And if we're using complex technologies, however, if we're building a car and it uses technologies that's all, interrelated, and if we ask somebody to solve a simple problem for us, that they come back and say, okay, here's your solution, and we say, yeah, but it won't fit with technology A, B, C, D, E, F, G that's in our car. We've got a complex car. It's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough to do. Tesla has really complex technologies, and you just can't go to Tesla and say, hey, can you plug this into your car? Won't work. It just won't work. So these are hard to open up. And the last part we want to address is innovation and imitation. Does it pay to innovate first? Is there a first mover advantage in innovation? So a first mover advantage exists where an organization is better off than its competitors as a result of being first to market with a new product, service, or process. What are potential benefits for our different strategies? We've got cost and differentiation strategies. If there's a strong experience curve, we may have a cost advantage of going first. The quicker we can get that experience in, we'll have a cost advantage. So let's go first. Again, if people can learn from our mistakes quicker, then that advantage may not exist. Are there scale benefits? Do we want to ramp up production before everybody else gets going? Great. Cost advantage, you may want to go first. What else have we got? Preemption of scarce resources. If I'm the first to market and there's scarce resources out there, if there's only a few inputs into my production process, if I can seize those inputs before everybody else or create a contract with an input provider, I'll preempt the availability, I'll preempt that market, and there's a first mover advantage. Reputation is a way that we can differentiate, and the earlier we move, the earlier we can claim we were the first ones there, and that can increase the value perceived by customers in some markets. If I'm the first player, well, that makes them look better. So it allows us to have higher prices. And lastly, buyer switching cost. If I can establish the standard before everybody else, if I move first and the market accepts that as the standard and they start using it, when somebody else comes in with a different product, the customer may say, well, if I change, it's going to be tough. So the buyers will get stuck with me, and we increase the switching cost. All of these first mover cost advantages that you see here pay off if for some reason new entrants come in or followers come in and you say, hey, I don't want you competing, or we're going to start a price war. So you go in first, you start learning first, you benefit from scale first, you can grab the resources before everybody else and maybe sign a contract with a supplier. That gives you an advantage to fend off potential entrants and rivals if a price war, if you want to start a price war, for example. Can following be better? Is it always advantageous to start? Or can you follow? And trust me, I know a lot of companies, a lot of high-tech companies that prefer to follow, because investing in those first technologies can be quite expensive. And sometimes you want to let somebody else discover and make mistakes, and you just learn from mistakes. So following can be better if you can free ride on innovation investments of the first movers. If you can imitate the first mover, you can basically cut the cost by 35%. Inventing and then innovating is an expensive process, and it's often easier for somebody to do it for you or let the competitor do the first move, make the mistakes, and then you come in and you imitate. Secondly, learning. Again, sometimes you want somebody to test the market. You want them to make mistakes, and then that allows you to learn from their mistakes. Now, again, if you can learn fast, if you don't have to go through the whole invention process to get where the competitor is, then you can learn from their mistakes and jump over them, basically, and just do what works. You don't have to make all the mistakes that we saw, for example, in effectuation. Learning by doing, lean startup, try it, make a mistake, try a second time, make a mistake, try a third time, make a mistake, but improve, etc., etc., etc. At some point you get it right, and that's when maybe the competitors come in. And radical innovation. With radical innovation, we're talking about disruptive innovation, stuff that are really game changer types of innovations. In these situations, it may be better to be what we call a fast second. Instead of being the first person, for example, in the market with the set-top box, for example, for internet access, sometimes it's better to come in and dominate the second generation of the technology. The first version of the set-top box, the triple play boxes you connect with your internet provider with, probably weren't very good. And so it's better to come in with the improved version and attack the market with the improved version. And that's basically what did happen in that marketplace. The first versions of the set-top boxes were not that great. And the people that came in afterwards came in with the second generation, the second version, literally in the same market with the improved version, and they actually had the advantage. Now I'd like to say a few words about if you should imitate or innovate, if you should be a first mover or start off second place. Can you capture the value of the innovation? First question. I mean, can you basically be a first mover, innovate, and grab the value? If so, yeah, great, move first. If it's, however, easy to copy and imitate, go second. Do you have the assets required to make it necessary? Do you have the complementary assets required to innovate or not? And do you have the assets to scale up and to reap the benefits required once you start selling more and more products? Do you have what it takes to grow the business and reap the benefits of the innovation later on? If so, you may want to innovate. And lastly, are you in a slower, fast-moving context? Do tastes change quickly? If tastes are changing quickly, the first mover may actually not have time to get back their investment, and you may want to wait for that second move to come about. And lastly, what about incumbents? And how do companies that are already in an industry innovate? And what are some of the challenges for companies that are in industries today? Well, we can look at a given technology, right? We have a base technology that's out there. For example, electric charges for cars. And we can innovate using that existing technology. We can modify what we call incrementally and move along this technology and improve over time the performance of our product. Or we can say, ooh, let's adopt a new technology. Let's make what we call a disruptive change or a radical change, adopt a new charging technology, and push us up this performance curve faster. Instead of going gradually over time, we can jump over and hit this curve over here because we've adopted a new technology. Now, this can be tough for incumbents. Incumbents have a tight relation with their existing client base, and sometimes those customers don't like big jumps in technology. Moving over to a new technology curve like this. They prefer incremental innovations that build on existing technologies. Companies are asking themselves, should we give up our current customers for potential new customers on this technology? Will customers abandon us if we move to a new technology? Radical innovations or disruptive innovations offer new technology that offer high potential in the long run. So this is it's a tough call. Incumbents need to balance satisfying existing customers along their current technology with potential benefits in the future of future customers and new technologies. Do I create incremental innovations, or do I make a big shift and adopt a new technology with the risk of maybe losing my initial customers? So what can incumbents do? What can existing firms do to satisfy, to potentially play both games? Well, the first thing to do is a real option. Basically, let me go back here. If you've got a technology that you've got here, and you know that there's a potential new technology out there, but if you jump to this new technology, you'll lose potentially some of your customers that are used to a basic technology. What you can try to do is invest in this new technology and be ready to make a jump when your customers and when the market is ready to go. So you create what's called a real option. You invest some time and some effort in preparing your organization for that jump to a new technology when the market's ready, when you've got the ability to make it happen. So you're basically preparing yourself and you're ready to move in real time. Secondly, and I mentioned this before, is to practice what's called corporate venturing. Having new venture units, new black ops. NG does this. Industrial Light and Magic. I mean, these are the guys that did all the special effects in the Star Wars movies and whatnot. They were a black op of Lucasfilm. They were separated. They were a separate unit, and they were able to invest without people always looking at them. You know, they were given a certain amount of money to test new technologies and build that technological capability of Lucasfilm to do some crazy new special effects in film. So they were able to balance this time to market type of incremental innovation and radical innovation that wasn't ready to go to market, but would be when the market was ready. So this is a way that companies can balance this out. Entrepreneurship obviously is the challenge here as well. And entrepreneurship is all about using existing managers in the existing organization, using their time and provide them resources to generate ideas and innovate. Companies that do this, like 3M, basically have rules about giving managers and employees time for pet projects to innovate, to try new ideas out, and they provide resources as long as these ideas fit with the strategy of the company. So incumbents actually have an advantage. Incumbents and existing firms can innovate, they have resources, they have knowledge, they have money, they have a whole bunch of stuff. If they can get people to behave like entrepreneurs and give them time, resources, etc., to build entrepreneurial innovations inside the company, they really do have a lot of resources that a startup outside of the company or a small company won't have. So behaving like an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur within the company can have some significant advantages for large companies. Okay, so we've reached the end of our section. We've covered entrepreneurship, we've covered innovation, we've covered a lot of subjects in these two videos. If you have any questions about the videos, please don't hesitate to send them on. I'd be more than happy to give it my old college try of answering your questions. I'm sure it'll be tough. And I hope you enjoy the videos and learn a little bit about innovation and entrepreneurship.